Someone said football, so I come running. What's going on, everybody?
No chance in Bingville. Can't see my dance. You want to see the new Tweeter end zone dance? Check it out. You know what it's called? What? New Tweeter end zone dance.
Nice. Nice. Nice.
Lions SRD on SportsRadioDetroit.com.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lions SRD. Nope, you are not dreaming. It is actually happening. We finally had time to give you what you guys want, a Lions podcast. But we have a new guest. We've gone through like 3 guests, Mike. You wouldn't believe this. We've gone through, let's see, Kevin Liddy was the initial. Well, first the initial was me and Roger, let's be honest. It was me and Roger, then Kevin Liddy, then Abe in Southfield, and then Marty Stouffer, whose father-in-law is in the hospital. And then, of course, you.
Hey!
ELE. Everybody loves everybody, right? Mike Pro himself.
Yes, sir.
It's glad. And, guys, if you haven't heard Mike before, he's on the SRD Road Show every Saturday. You can listen to that at crbradio.com. If you want to listen to it live, it's every Saturday from 9 to 11. And then Mike also had are you still doing the Motor City Juke Joint?
No, that just ended about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Thank God.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, if people want to, get a background on Mike Pro, that's a show that he hosted on Cave Radio, and we're obviously welcoming him into Lions and welcoming him into Sports Radio Detroit. He's very knowledgeable. He's very great. Before we get into anything, though, I know, last week on the Road Show, Mike, you and I, and we all talked about this, about how we ingest and digest news. How do you watch the NFL draft? Are you a guy that watches it on ESPN? Or are you a guy that watches it on the NFL Network? How do you consume the NFL draft?
I switch back and forth just because I love different people. Like Deion Sanders, I'm always going to love that guy. But there's certain aspects of both that I like. But it was mainly ESPN, and I'm doing a lot of research as it's going on there. So I actually just have whatever's on in the background as I'm doing research on all the people and what they're talking about.
Oh, yeah. No, that's fair. Go ahead, man. Yeah.
No, but yeah, it's I would put mainly it's probably 70% all ESPN though.
Okay. I mean that is totally fair, because I mean I'm the type of person on day one it's a spectacle, so I'm okay watching it on ESPN. So day one is always going to be ESPN. Days 2, where it's the second and third round, no matter what, I'm always going to watch it on the NFL Network because I want a little bit deeper analysis. And then same thing with day 3, where it's rounds 4 through 7. I want Daniel Jeremiah and Mike Mayock to be telling me why I should care about, as an example, a kid that gets drafted out of San Diego in the 5th round, what he can bring to the Lions, like what he can bring, to, basically, if he even has a chance to win a roster spot. You can also go, to NFL.com, look at their tracker. They'll actually grade it out for you. Anywhere from about a 5.5 and up, you're a potential backup to starter. So, but
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, all the Lions grades except for 2, Jamal Agnew in particular, and then the 7th round pick, Pat O'Connor out of Eastern Michigan, didn't get a 5.5 or higher. But what was one of the things, though, especially from day one, that was your biggest surprise? Was it the quarterback run? Was it the Bears making the questionable trade up to get their quarterback in Mitch Trubisky? What surprised you the most in day one?
Yeah, that Chicago trade. I honestly felt like the GM from Chicago owed money to John Lynch, so he gave him that trade to square it out. There was no indication that San Francisco. I don't really see that many mock drafts saying San Francisco was going to take Mitch. So you overpaid for one spot. And then it was just a crappy deal for Mike Glennon because they're paying him 18 this year. And he's basically got a 1-year deal with no weapons. So he's got to show his abilities for his future contract with no weapons on a rebuilding Chicago team who doesn't even care about him because they drafted another quarterback. So that was just mind blowing right there.
But I was gonna say, what was mind blowing to me was that they invite Mike Glennon to the draft party. So he's there mingling with the fans. He's like, "Hey, I'm Mike Glennon." And guys like, "Who?" "Oh, I was a backup in Tampa. I was pretty good at NC State, but I'm your new quarterback." And then they're like, "Oh, okay, cool." Then sure enough, the commission comes out and says, "There's been a trade for the number 2 pick." Everyone's like, "Oh, great, it's exciting." And Chicago's name's on the board. And then Mike Glennon watches the video screen, and it's Mitch Trubisky. And he's like, "What the hell am I doing here then?" So, yeah, I mean, that's...
Everybody was shocked. After it happened, I thought that they were going to, all right, maybe they did this for a trading piece. They're going to now trade him to another team. But none of that happened. They're like, yeah, we're keeping this guy.
Oh, yeah. That's one thing that I always find interesting about the NFL draft, and I'm glad you kind of just mentioned it. You see it in the NBA draft all the time. Like, a player gets drafted, and then he's immediately traded.
Mm-hmm. That happens all the time.
Happens like every other pick in the NBA. But like in the NFL, they're like, "No, I drafted you. You're mine." It's like
you're coming.
Exactly. Like that's one thing that's always surprised me. I'm not gonna lie. It's just, I mean, I think the last draft day deal that we've seen of like an NBA magnitude was when Eli was drafted and Phillip Rivers were drafted. The Chargers and Giants basically were like, "Yeah, we'll draft who you want, and then we'll trade them." And they're like, "Oh, okay, great." I mean, that
was made because what Eli said, "I don't want to play for you."
Exactly. He and his dad were basically like, "Yep, we're not going to play for the Chargers. We want to play in New York." And then the trade happened. So, but yeah, let's go into it because that quarterback slide really, really changed the entire outcome of the draft. I mean, you had the Chiefs trading up and trading their souls away for Pat Mahomes, and then you had
I like that.
You do? Why?
Because I like Pat Mahomes. He does have raw talent. He has an arm. He used to be a pitcher, and we got drafted. He's got the bloodline, but he's got that big play ability, like that can stretch the field with his arm. Out of the quarterbacks, I really like Pat Mahomes. Out of Mitch, I would have taken Pat over Mitch. And Watson, that's almost like a push. Watson has more big game experience, but I really love the game tape on Pat Mahomes. And back to watching what we were watching draft the Hey Rookie on the NFL Network was very, very interesting, and I love what they did with the rookies on that show. But
yeah,
with the quarterbacks, I really like Pat Mahomes and Alex Smith. He's a good quarterback. He's just a standard. He's nothing extravagant. He's nothing over the top. And that's just their quarterback of their future. And if you want to work on the future, you need to do something like that. And now Alex Smith is in no way about to lose his job this year. So it's back to where the QBs used to be years back. If you draft a QB, he sits on a bench for a year, he learns some things, and then you put him in later like the next season instead of just tossing him right in there and just ruining the career.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then of course you have Deshaun Watson, going to the Texans. The Texans desperately needing a quarterback. He, as you said, big game experience, and that waterfall effect, that trickle down effect, led to a major slide. And I was one of them that was kind of getting excited because I was like, well, Reuben Foster's probably going to be a Lion. And then obviously we find out, and there's was news that was released this week. This is why, like, a lot of people always do podcasts that are like reactionary podcasts of like what happens, and then you don't really get like the full stories that fully leak out from the draft yet. And this was one that was interesting. Reuben Foster had a shoulder surgery and it didn't take. Like, it didn't fully repair his shoulder. So that's why he kept sliding. And I know a lot of people, Reuben Foster's a name. He's a name because obviously at the combine, he got into that medical dispute and he was asked to leave the combine, so people already knew about him. And obviously he went to Alabama, so Alabama's
Roll
defense, exactly, the Roll Tide defense rolls over everybody. So anytime there's a player out of Alabama that plays defense, you just start salivating. And I think this is where the Lions actually get it right. I think, a lot of people look at a guy like Gerard Davis, a little bit smaller than Reuben Foster, but probably equal in speed, probably equal in strength, and he's a little bit healthier. Granted, he played the second half of the season with a bum ankle, but still played through it. So I'm okay with that pick. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's a safe pick," but I actually think it was the right pick. I don't think it was safe.
It was safe and it was right. I was when Reuben Foster was on there on the board. I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, all right, Reuben Foster. And the funny thing was, like, they had their pick so quick, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, only a couple of minutes into it, it's like, yeah, the pick is in, instead of waiting the whole 9 minutes, like the team didn't know who they wanted the entire time, which I absolutely hate. But I was like, Reuben Foster, and they said Jarrett Davis, and I was like, all right. I was upset just because I like Reuben Foster, but I was like, all right, that's still an equal pick right there. It's equally as good.
Oh, yeah.
So I wasn't mad.
Yeah, and plus, he's going to start right away, and we found out actually today there's been rumors that Tahir Whitehead's now not going to be a middle linebacker. They're actually going to move him to the outside. So you look at a guy like Antoine Williams, who was a draft pick last year, maybe he moves inside because he's a little bit bigger, a little bit slower. So you have guys on the inside now. And then the Lions go back looking to the Gators' defense, because the Gators have had a pretty good defense the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And they get a guy in Jalen Tease Tabor, a guy that I know we talked about on the road show last week just a little bit, but it was one of the things that you have all these other corners on the board, but the thing is, not all the corners have really good tape. Tabor actually has good tape. In his defense, he does. But he
Great tape.
Exactly, but he's insanely slow. So I think, and a lot of people, though, they see that because he ran a 4.6 at the combine, then on his pro day it was like a 4.67, and then a 4.7. And just to put that into context, I'm going to totally go classic radio caller on you for a second, Mike. In high school, I ran a 4.74 40, and I was 5'10", 225 pounds. And I ran a 4.74 40 when I played football. Now, I say that for a reason because, one, I'm athletic, but I'm not that athletic. Two,
yeah, you're no Tabor.
Exactly. I'm no Tease Tabor. And that's the other thing. I never got D1 offers. I stopped playing as a sophomore because I didn't want knee surgery. And yeah, so whenever I hear those numbers, I'm like, well, shit, man, I ran that in high school, and I didn't play a position that needed speed. I was a linebacker and a defensive end. This guy's on the outside. He needs that recovery speed. So it's just one of the things that, you look at the highlight tape, your jaw drops. He attacks in the run game. It looks nice. But it's the speed that concerns me. Did you like that pick or no?
I didn't, but I know we needed some corner help, and I like the T-shirt that were saying "check the tape, check the tape."
Yeah,
because if he's got good football IQ, then he's not going to get beat, and that recovery speed is not going to hurt too much. Now, what it will hurt is if his catching defender, let's say if it's not his fault and trying to catch somebody, that's not going to help. But he's got a high football IQ, so I feel like it's not going to hurt him too much.
Yeah, and that's something that two people were saying, and I'm glad you brought it up, that because Joe Hayden, when he was on Florida's defense, so was Tabor, and even people were saying, well, Tabor was the better of the two, and Joe Hayden's not bad, but he also had the same knock that he was slow. So it's one of the things that will lead into a question, which we'll get to in a little bit. Quickly going through day 2. We had Tabor, and then Kenny Galladay out of Northern Illinois, a guy who brings size to the wide receiver position. Well, I mean, 4.5 is not insanely slow, but I mean, it's not fast either. I mean, he's clearly a possession receiver, but it's a guy who brings size. And I know a lot of people are wondering about what's going to happen with Anquan Bolden. Anquan Bolden led the Lions receivers in touchdowns last year,
which is shameful, if you ask me.
It is, because it means that there was a lack of production by your two key guys, one of which was a key free agent that you brought in Marvin Lewis. So I agree with that. But they do get bigger with this draft pick, so it made sense a little bit. And then as we go through the draft, there's Jalen Reeves-Maybin. If you recognize that last name, he is cousins with the former Tiger player, Andrew Maybin. So there's that connection, and people are probably going to fall in love with him there. He was a linebacker who brings speed. And it's one of the things that, looking over like these draft picks and letting all this digest and sink in a little bit, the Lions really have not had athletic linebacker play. And when you look at a team across the NFL that has pretty good, quick linebackers, one of the names that pops up is the Atlanta Falcons. And Thomas Dimitroff, who's a GM in Atlanta, is a New England protege. Bob Quinn is a New England protege. He's upgrading his linebacking core, making it quick and athletic, which obviously we saw last year because they couldn't cover a tight end to save their life. And they couldn't cover a running back to save their life either. Do you like what they did at the linebacker position with Gerard Davis and then with Jalen Reeves-Maybin? Or no?
In a way, because I was upset that they traded back, because I would have liked if we would have got Deontay Foreman or Lewis in the third round, which they were still on the board. But I figured Lewis is too much of a risk because he's basically at home and he just got in trouble at home. Mm-hmm. So let's try not to keep this guy at home where he might get in trouble again. But they made up for the pick by picking Galladay. So I really like that. But in the they had two fourth round picks. I didn't like it because there was better people on the board.
Yeah.
There were better people on the board, and I don't like Roberts at all. This is my thinking, that they would have traded the fourth to move up to either get Sam Perrine or somebody else, because you got 2 fourth round picks. Okay, I understand. Maybe you did shop the 4th round pick and a 6th or whatever, try to move up, and nobody wanted to. But to choose Roberts over Jake Butt is, which I didn't like, is because you picked up all right, now you're going to pick up the 5th-year option on Ebron, so you got him for 2 more. So if you get Butt, you're not asking him to start day 1. He's got the talent. Let him heal completely. Bring him in after week 6, and then move on from there. But I don't really like that Roberts pick. But he is the Maven. He is athletic. He is a leader. I mean, a 3-year starter. That means a lot. So that means he's got talent. And the same thing. And the same thing with their pick in the 5th. The other cornerback, another 4-year starter. So there was a safe pick. If you're looking at everybody else who was taken, there wasn't that much talent unless you were going to move up in the 4th. They didn't move up. It was solid picks. It was nothing flashy.
Oh yeah, I mean it was a typical just let's just cover our bases, and they did that last year. And hell, 8 of the 10 guys contributed. It actually, some of the guys now, like Williams and Zadell and Glasgow, and all the guys that were just pieces are probably going to be starters. So it's just or starters or get significant time.
The upside for Roberts is huge though, because he's a 1-year starter, 16 touchdown passes, which is just phenomenal. So he used to play basketball. I love basketball converted tight ends. That means they have hands, which we are missing at our tight end position. So the upside of Roberts is good because he does have hands. He's 6'4". I mean, so he's a big dude. So I like the upside of it.
Yeah, and another guy that has major upside, and before I get into it though, I mean I agree. Like when I'm watching the draft, I try to guess ahead of what GMs are going to do because I try to see what they're thinking. And right when they traded back, they traded to New England, and then they traded back. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, like what the hell? And the funny thing was, going back to Jake Butt had a worse fall than Connor Cook did last year. And Connor Cook and both these guys, both local guys, both very good at their positions, both solid. Granted, Connor Cook didn't get injured. I mean, he injured his shoulder maybe once at Michigan State, if I remember correctly. But I did not anticipate Jake Butt falling all the way to the 5th round. I mean, that was something that totally shocked me.
I didn't either, but because before the draft came out, it was still saying that he may not be ready for the beginning of the season, and teams are just looking at, all right, that's a second ACL, and he may not be ready for the beginning of the season, so are we going to put him on the PUP list?
Right.
So he's going to maybe redshirt to his first full season, first half season. So for a person with 2 ACLs and we're going to miss the first 6 to 8 games, not a lot of teams are going to risk a top 3, top 3 round pick on him. But I mean, either way, he did get paid from it. But I was definitely surprised. First pick of the 5th round. He ended up in a good place, though.
Oh yeah, he ended up at a great place, and luckily for the Broncos, they thought they got a steal. A lot of people around here are going to think they got a steal as well. But going into the transition here, a guy who could potentially be a good steal, and the Lions got a quarterback in the 6th round last year as well, and Jake Rudock. Well, they went back to the position because a guy who was sitting there, and they didn't want to say bye Felicia to this dude at all. They got Brad Kaya out of Miami. That was a pick. I'm looking at it. I'm thinking, okay. I mean, at times he could move the ball. Always found Njoku, his tight end. They work together pretty well. He does know a couple of pro concepts. He can work under center. He may be a more higher upside than Rudock. But it was just really, really weird that the Lions decided to get Brad Kaya, especially when they signed Rudock to protect Rudock from getting signed from the Bears. Because Rudock was on the practice squad last year. They signed him onto the active roster so the Bears couldn't pick him up because the Bears wanted to sign him off Detroit's practice squad. And it's just one of the things that's interesting because essentially what they've done, obviously addressing defense was important in the draft and with the free agents that they got after the draft. But it's just interesting that now there's arguably competition at every single position across the board. Either you get in or you get out, especially at corner, especially at quarterback, linebacker. They had to start from scratch basically from at linebacker, so you're not really fighting there. But defensive line, you're fighting a little bit as well. It was one of those picks that I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I mean, it's strange, but especially in the 6th round, you're looking for pure value no matter what. And Brad Kaya wasn't a bad value pick in my mind. What did you think?
I thought it was a good pick. Looking at everybody else on the board before then and after then, that was basically the best available person, especially if Rudock, he is a little bit older. Not too sure if they like him for a future backup, but at that time, at the pick, he was like best available. So right. I mean, it was a good pick. It was definitely a good pick because Rudock, if Stafford goes down, I don't see Rudock doing much for us.
Right.
So, but it does give him a lot of time to learn the system. So if anything does happen, I would have more faith in him than I did with Rudock.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing though too. Like, this is one of the deepest, at least talent-wise, because Rudock is a traditional pocket passer. He's not going to move around all that much, even though he can move out of the pocket. But the Lions actually now have depth at quarterback. Before, it was Matthew Stafford and a bunch of bums. I mean, let's be honest. You wanna say you have Orlovsky, who was just there to protect the cap space and be a bridge of communication between Caldwell and Stafford, and then Kellen Moore, who yes at Boise State looked good, but he never had the arm strength to be an NFL quarterback. I mean, that was apparent. But now you have these guys who have the potential to be NFL quarterbacks, and plus, you can keep Kaya on your practice squad. You can still have Rudock as your primary backup, and still have good scout production, at least with Rudock or with Kaya, because he has a solid arm and he can move. So it's not entirely bad. Really quickly though, just quickly wrapping up who the Lions got in free agents. Basically, a guy that I love, just because he was the number one, I think, run stopper according to Pro Football Focus. If you're a stat junkie, this guy literally jumps off the page at you. He's undersized as a pass rusher. He's only 6'2", 225 pounds, but he had team highs of 7.5 sacks, 13 tackles for loss in 2016. Alex Barrett out of San Diego State. Then the Lions got another corner, Josh Thornton out of Southern Utah. If Southern Utah is familiar, that's where Miles Killebrew came from. So you maybe want to go back to that well, see if there's another diamond in the rough there a little bit. Jeremiah Valoga was a defensive end that they picked up. They picked up another tight end out of Alabama State and Brandon Barnes. Another real interesting pick that they got in free agency was Tion Green out of Cincinnati. The guy's a power back. He's a really big, imposing force. And it's just one of the things that a lot of people are like, are you going to draft running back? I thought potentially the Lions were going to trade up for Pirine, just because he would have been a good power back. But obviously that didn't happen. I really thought Bob.
I was so hoping on that.
Well, I honestly thought Bob Quinn and the Lions were going to go Joe Mixon. I honestly thought that if Joe Mixon was going to slide, granted he didn't, but if he was going to slide into around 21, I think Bob Quinn would have pulled the trigger, but that's just me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There was, 5 picks away, and I was like, man, if he is there, we're getting him. Him. But then he goes to Cincy, and that was the other thing about the draft. There was quarterbacks who went to weird places, but there was running backs that went to weird. A lot of running backs, big-name running backs, went to teams that already have a running back.
Yeah.
Mixon goes to Cincinnati with Hill and Bernard.
Yep.
Kamara goes to New Orleans, and they got Adrian Peters and Mark Ingram.
Yep.
The other guy goes to Houston, and they already got Lamar Miller. So I was like, man, these are some weird places for these backs, but whatever. I guess we're going to go to this two-back system again.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you also had Dalvin Cook going to Minnesota, who got
Dalvin Cook to Minnesota, yep.
And, I mean, they still have
Latavius Murray.
Yeah, they signed Murray from Oakland, and now Oakland has Marshawn Lynch. That's still crazy. I can't get over that. But you still have good running backs in Minnesota.
That pick right there kind of kills my fantasy. I did have Latavius Murray on my team, and I'm like, shoot! I'm trying to draft. Trying to trade for the other guy right now.
Yeah, and again, going down, there was another tight end, Robert Tonyan, a wide receiver out of Stanford. You have and Michael Rector, who's really fast. He runs a 4.42, so that's okay. You have a guy out of Toledo and Storm Norton. Great football name there. He's a tackle.
I know. That's the guy who I'm looking at. Storm Norton right there.
That's not bad. It's not. I mean, 6'8", 311 pounds, and a 2-year starter. That's not bad, man. That's not bad. And then Noel Thomas out of UConn. There was actually a really good piece on Lions Wire. If you don't know Ty Schulter, he's basically started Lions Wire. Has really good contributors there, and there was good content. It was a nice story that they had with Noel Thomas out of UConn, and then there's just other wide receivers like Dontez Ford, Daquan Hampton out of USC. There's another tight end, Luke. I think his name is Papillion. And then
they almost got this before the draft. Not to interrupt. They almost got this one. Who was a guy out of? He was a basketball player. This dude's like,
out of VCU.
yeah, that guy's huge.
Yeah,
I think he signed with the Giants or something.
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, I can see if I can look it up really quick. But let me see. Yeah, Mo Ali Cox. That was his name. He was a forward. He's 6'7", 225 pounds, and he's going to be a Colt. So
okay.
So he's just going to follow in with Antonio Gates and Jimmy Graham and see if he can transition to the football field. And,
yep.
I mean, it's not bad. It was interesting, but yeah, if there's a guy like that, how do you not sign him? So, I mean, all in all, I mean, we're not going to offer grades because grades are ridiculous. Let's be honest. It's just one of the things that you honestly cannot grade kids at least a year out. I mean, you can try, but you can't. But I mean, one of the things that at least the overall impression from the draft, it was just another solid, look at what you need to fill, and the Lions had tons of needs to fill, and they addressed it. They addressed competition across the board. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think it's just a very solid, middle of the road type Bob Quinn draft that we're used to, which brings me to my next point, though. At this point, how much do you trust Bob Quinn? In all honesty, because it's something that he says. He says all the right things. Anquan Bolden, he says that the door's open for him, even though it's clear the Lions are ready to move on without him. You look at the draft, you look at the free agents that they bring in. It would just be.
They don't have that much money, anyways.
Exactly. I mean, it's just one of the things that you see it, and you're just thinking to yourself, you're like, okay, well, maybe Bolden's on the outside looking in. And then, Bob Quinn also says that he's going to look at and talk to Joe Mixon. He was the only GM who said that publicly. And it was the biggest deal. Obviously, it's a moot point. Mixon's not a Lion. But how much do you trust Bob Quinn, knowing that 8 out of 10 guys that he drafted last year contributed, and all but one ended up on the active roster? Because, like I said, they signed Rudock to protect teams from stealing them. And the other guy, Landis, the long snapper, went on IR so they could stash him. But, basically 9 guys were on the active roster. So I present the question to you, Mike. How much do you trust Bob Quinn at this point?
He hasn't done anything to lose my trust. I mean, when you go into a relationship, you have to go in there with trust. And until you lose my trust, you have it. And he made solid picks last year that contributed to the team. It was another safe draft where he did fill a lot of holes that we had. The only thing that I would have did different was, trade up for a couple people who I like P. Ryan. But besides that, he spent a lot of money on the offensive line this free agency, and that was smart because this is one of the worst offensive line drafts in quite some time. It wasn't like late first round and then in the later rounds for the offensive guards, and I didn't see that at all. And then that's just from him doing his research and the scouting. So I was like, all right, our O-line sucks. Let's do something in free agency because this draft sucks. If we don't do anything now, then we're going to fail another season. So we spent big money in the free agency and made some nice solid picks in the draft. Didn't do anything flashy. Didn't try to do anything too much. So I like him. I trust him. And I mean, besides trading up for P. Ryan, I'm not mad at not one of the picks that we made.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I love the way you put it, though, too. He hasn't done anything to not earn your trust. So, but an interesting pivot point here, because you touched on it a little bit. There was no good offensive, lineman in the draft. Obviously, they signed TJ Lang, and they signed the guy out of Baltimore. His name's quickly escaping me. But they upgraded the right side of the offensive line. And I know a lot of people, me included, thought the Lions were going to draft a guy who could be an impact player. And Bob Quinn, even at the NFL meetings, was saying, well, I like who we have. We don't know exactly what we have fully at the running back position, but I'm always looking to upgrade. And he's always been open about that. He's always looking to upgrade, and that was evident, at least in this year's free agency period, because you could have kept Riley Reif if you wanted to. And that it was Ricky Wagner. Instead, they get Wagner, who is a better right tackle than Riley Reif. And then you have TJ Lang, who doesn't give up a sack at all. And in theory, and Bob Quinn even said this too, because he alluded to it, and this is why it's always interesting to listen to his press conferences, even though in this edition we don't have sound, but if you listen to other Lions SRDs, we obviously will play sound if it, behooves us to do so. But he gave a little hint of, the running game is not just the running back, it's the blocking, it's how you set up things. And I thought that was interesting because, one, he's not wrong. Two, it kind of showed that in this draft by not drafting a running back, not reaching for a running back, not making a foolish move of, you could argue it would have been foolish to trade up for P. Ryan when you have so many holes to fill anyways, you can just hold on to those picks. So it's just one of the things that that's why I like the way that you put it. He hasn't done anything to lose anyone's trust yet. He's doing things that are smart. And I guess the next question is, do you think the Lions right now have enough to at least maybe think that they can get better production in the running game? Because anytime Jim Caldwell takes over a team, the running game suffers because Jim Caldwell likes to throw the football. I mean, he doesn't. It's fun. It's exciting. But the Lions last year were one of the worst teams running the football, period. And these little subtle moves, plus you're going to get Amir Abdullah back, who's fully healthy. So you get to see him. Guys coming on at the end of the year. You still have Dwayne Washington. You have all of these guys that are just, that can help supplement the position. Are you okay with what they did to maybe help, help the running game there? Or I'll put it this way. Do you think they've helped the running game so far? Yes or no?
I think they helped the running game because we needed better protection. And if these guys are going to do better than the last guys, then we can't really get worse because our running game is just horrendous. So we can't really get much worse with that. So if we can get a running game, we can get a better passing game. But we can't get a running game with a crappy offensive line. So I honestly do feel that we've made some upgrades to the offensive line. And if Abdullah can stay healthy, then yes. But if he goes down again, that's why I think we didn't draft a running back, is because he still wants to give these guys the chance that they're due and just say, okay, we're blaming our misfortunes on an injury and our offensive line sucks. So that if we're healthy and we have a good O-line, then we should have a good running game. And I think that's what his thinking is, and that's the way we're going to go forward. That's why we didn't draft a single running back.
Yeah, I mean, you still have Zach Zenner, who came on, like I said, at the end of the year. Dwayne Washington helped out. Still have Mike James, but, I mean, Theo Riddick, we learned at the end of the year that, he basically broke both of his wrists. And so you don't know how healthy he's going to be, but he's still a weapon. And then Amir Abdullah, getting healthy on what Bob Quinn even calls a freak injury. So, I mean, it's something that, again, it's something that's going to be interesting because a guy like Amir Abdullah, who has running issues or fumbling issues, he runs well, but he just can't hold on to the football. If he can resolve that and stay healthy, then yes, by all means, the running game is going to be fine because I think he can be that
he could be a good back, and we lost production when he went down, and then we were giving jobs to players that they shouldn't have those jobs. Theo Riddick shouldn't be shouldering the load for a team. He's a weapon. He's not the lead back. You know what I mean? Zach Zinner, that's a third down back. He's not let's give this dude the ball 20 times a game back. And Dwayne Washington was just a rookie, so he didn't really have his game and football speed up. So that's where we went wrong. So if people can stay healthy, I do like Abdullah one last year, but this is all he gets.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think, because you have to see what Abdullah can bring to you. But I agree with you full-heartedly, Mike. If Abdullah doesn't show anything in this year, you have to get rid of him. You just have to. And there's always going to be running backs every year that come in through the draft that you can look at. So it's not a bust by any means, but also, Bob Quinn has talked about, getting into the early stages of signing Matthew Stafford. We learned in this week that Glover Quinn, who's at the end of his contract, wants an extension. He wants to stay here. He's 31 years old, but Matthew Stafford's going to command a lot of money. But Bob Quinn, we've seen, is more inclined to not just give max money right out the door. He does more of incentive-related contracts where he'll give you a good solid base, and then he can give you your potential of what you can make if you hit certain escalators. He did that with Darius Slay. He's done that with a couple other players. But it's just one of the things that goes back and it compounds on the question, how much do you trust Bob Quinn? It's just because Glover Quinn is a guy who last year literally played every second of every NFL game the Lions were in. He never took a play off. He was never subbed out of the field. He basically was, no matter what, whenever the defense was out there. And he's getting up there in age a little bit. He's 31 years old. It's not terribly old, but it's old in terms of if you're looking into your third contract of your season. And he's not by any means making a whole hell of a lot of money. He's only making 4.6 a year. And as you mentioned, he hit his roster bonus, so he got $1 million out of that. It's just one of the things that you just wonder how Bob Quinn's going to handle, because a lot of people, and I made the joke even when Brad Kyle was drafted, I'm like, trade Stafford, because you have your quarterbacks, you have two young quarterbacks, screw it. But in all seriousness, you have to keep Stafford. He's a top 10 quarterback in the league. He's still young. Stafford still hasn't even hit his ceiling yet. He hasn't had an offensive line that can keep him off the ground yet. So, you see all of these things, and they're intriguing things. It's going to be interesting to see how all these contracts kind of play out. It's something that, will Glover Quinn get an incentive-related deal, especially since he's older? How the deal is going to look like with Matthew Stafford, because from all intents and purposes, it looks like Stafford's party and the Lions both want to make this deal happen. It's not like Stafford's going to balk at the last second or anything like that and then walk by any means. It's going to be interesting. And it's just, I don't know if a lot of people fully trust. I think they have cautious optimism with Bob Quinn, because so far he hasn't done anything that you just go, huh? Like, what? Except for maybe drafting Tabor. But again, he loved his film. Last thing, go ahead.
No, yeah, I would say he does have good tape, but with the Matthew Stafford contract, it'll look like it's a lot of money, like this year, next year, but in 3 years, it's gonna be below. It's gonna be just like everybody else's. So it's only gonna look like an enormous contract the first year or two. So I say we got to hold on to him unless somebody wants to give us like two number one picks or something.
I was gonna say, if someone wants Matthew Stafford, I agree. That asking price, honestly, is going to be a first round pick this year, a first round next year and your second round pick of this year. That's just gets you to the table to talk. I mean, that's just entry costs right there. We're not even talking, anything else of like a player to come with them or anything. You're giving up a franchise quarterback, and you're not going to give up a guy that's dirt cheap at all.
And if you're going to do it anytime, this would be the year to do it because next year's QB class is looking pretty good.
Yeah, you have Lamar Jackson, you have Sam Darnold out of USC, you have the kid out of Josh Rosen out of UCLA. You jumped the gun.
No, I was talking about Josh Allen out of Wyoming.
Oh yeah, no, him too. Okay.
So you got like 4 QBs in the top 10. So if you're going to do it, this would be the year to do it. Even though I would never draft Lamar Jackson whatsoever, but
yeah,
we got to hold on to him though.
Oh sure, definitely, and it's just something too. Like, I don't know, just looking at everything and seeing where things go. Has it surprised you that Jay Cutler hasn't had a job yet? Hasn't had an offer yet? Because there's now rumors of him going like the same route as
Booth.
Yeah, going to the booth, retiring, giving up, basically going the route of Tony Romo and being an analyst. Are you shocked that he
Jay
hasn't
Cutler
gotten a look?
Sucks.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, Jay Cutler there's a team like the Jets that could use Jay Cutler.
I'm sure teams have called him to be a backup, but he has the ego where he's not going to be a backup, and he's like, all right, I've made money and I've played. So either I'm going to be a starter or I'm just going to leave. I don't see him being a backup anywhere. So I guarantee you he's gotten calls to be a backup. That's not what he wants to do. But he's been he hasn't been an elite quarterback since he's been in the game. He's had elite wide receivers, or his top 10 wide receivers, and really didn't do anything with it. You know what I mean? He left Denver, and Tebow did a better job than he did, and that's just horrible. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I guess that's fair. I mean, it is. I mean, Tim Tebow actually has a playoff win.
Yeah. So, and Jay Cutler, he wants to be a starter. He's not going to be a starter anywhere. I see Colin Kaepernick being on a team before Jay Cutler being on a team, and Kaepernick is okay with being a second stringer, even though he's an idiot for giving up $12 million this year too. But whatever.
Yeah, but I think he just wanted away from San Francisco. I think obviously if he would have known that San Francisco was going to have a guy like John Lynch, maybe he would have stayed.
But
I mean, then again, the York family is terrible. I mean, so I don't blame him for wanting to get out of there at all. But I mean, that's one thing that's also, I mean, it's not surprising because Kaepernick's going to get signed right around training camp. I mean, he will.
Yep.
He's a guy who still has talent. He still has a good arm. So it's not all bad, so to speak. But one thing that he was doing that I really liked and appreciated, because I don't think it's going to get talked about all that much. There was a little blurb online about it, but he's a guy who was in front of a parole office in New York handing out his customized suits to people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for people that, are looking to get jobs, that are trying to better themselves. And you're just like...
What was that? What was it called? It was like 100 for 100?
Something like that, yeah. And it was just, but like, you're thinking about it, like, you're seeing all these things, and a lot of people will, get up in arms about how he treated the national anthem. And, we could do an entire show about that. But, I mean, he's a guy who not only has been an activist, he's backed up his talk in every way, shape, and form. He's still, has donated money. He's donating suits. He's donating his time. He's, raising issues, raising awareness. And, the thing that I guess I don't get, a guy like Tim Tebow, even after Denver, he was brought in to the Jets. And then, there was that big news conference for a guy that wasn't going to play. And a guy that, everyone's like, well, and there was a rumor that you can't sign Tim Tebow because, well, it's going to be a circus if you sign him. There's going to be a media circus. You just can't have him. Well, you have a guy, Colin Kaepernick, who's a stand-up individual, and he can't get signed. I mean, he can't get signed before training camp. It's just, it blows my mind. It's just totally, absolutely ridiculous that you have a guy in Colin Kaepernick that just is, in my opinion, doing all the right things and is still getting blackballed by the NFL. It doesn't make sense.
It wasn't a good year for his actions. San Francisco sucked, so it made it look like he sucked. Mm-hmm. And then he's got all this drama around him, even though it's not really even drama anymore. So the teams are just looking at, all right, the cost, talent, drama, is it worth it? And he definitely has talent, and he's definitely a good guy. Like I said, like donating the suits. He just donated $50,000 to the Meals on Wheels. You know what I mean? So he's not. I feel like when people say somebody's going to be a distraction on the team, it's actually much bigger. It's less than what people are making it. I don't think he was going to be that big of a deal if he signs with a team or that big of a headache. So teams are just going to wait until training camp starts, and then he'll sign with the team, and then hopefully he gets his opportunity again because he does have talent. I mean, he can start over any person on the New York roster right now.
Yeah, he could. I mean, he honestly could. It's just, I don't know. It's just something that kind of blows my mind, especially when you see such a good story come out and such a good positive story. But really, really something really quick. Last thing to probably touch on is Hello Inada coming back. But before he did, he got tested by a neurologist. Do you think that's going to be the new normal? Just to, for older players in their careers, where you're just thinking to yourself, should I play or should I not play? Because I know, especially with the Lions, they were waiting quite some time for an official decision. They wanted to know if he was going to come back or not. And obviously, he did. What did you make of that story, Mike? I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit before the show, but what did you think about it?
I thought it was very smart and a great idea. But I definitely don't think it's going to be something that continues on by other players. Because just like I haven't made a doctor's appointment to go see what my MRI results for my shoulder is, because I don't want to know what it is. You know what I mean? Okay. So, and a lot of people are like, all right, I'm going to base my decision on what my brain says. I can make $8 million, but if my brain tells me I'm no good, then I'm not going to do it. You think people are going to choose to give up that $8 million? No. So it's a very smart idea. I would love if more players, especially if you were concussion prone, even though he's only had one concussion in his documented 11 years that he told about. Who knows if he's had many more and just never said anything about. But I definitely don't think more people are going to do it because it's just, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know. I'd rather not know and something happened rather than I did know. I mean, me knowing and then I miss out on this money because you think, okay, my brain might say I'm not good enough to play, but I feel my body that I can. You know what I mean? So then now you're going to be second guessing and all this. It's definitely a great idea, and I'm glad he did it. Maybe it can't take off from there.
Yeah, no, I mean it's something that it just was so out of the box, like so unconventional. Even though obviously in this day and age, a lot of people are talking about head injuries, and with still with the movie last year Concussion coming out, or maybe now it's 2 years ago. With that coming out and all of this just coming to light, you have guys like Chris Borland who leads the 49ers in tackles in his rookie season. Then after that, he's like, "Hey, I'm done. I'm retiring." And then you have other guys, retiring maybe earlier, leaving the game early. It was interesting just to see that article. Dave Burkett in the Free Press had it, and you think about it. You're like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I never thought someone would actually have that as a part of their evaluation to see if they had come back. I mean, obviously, a physical
He's
is
smart.
one. No, he is, because I mean, the physical is one thing, and he just takes the physical to the next step. Sees a neurologist. Neurologist is like, yeah, no, I think you're okay. I think you can still do it. So, it's
shout out to the Core Institute in Brighton.
Right? I mean, yeah, it is. It's just something that was unexpected and different to see. I mean, that's what I'll put it. But any last parting thoughts of wisdom, Mike, or anything like that?
Go Lions! And out of everybody from the draft, I am definitely excited for Galladay. He did say that he has the talent and he could be a starter day one. So that kind of puts the rest of the wide receivers on notice. So I'm looking forward to the season because when I looked at our schedule, the beginning looks rough.
Yeah,
but
it does.
I have us having 9 wins with like a possible. I already know we're going to lose the Giants and the Panthers, but if there's like 9 wins, I say yes, and then there's a few hopefuls. So, but I feel it's going to be a good season, definitely.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I mean, just really quick. Yeah, I mean, the schedule came out 2 weeks ago, and you're right. The first 8 games are rough, but
really rough.
Yeah, but I think you could beat the Vikings. I think you can beat them at US Bank Stadium. I think you can maybe beat the Cardinals. I mean, the Cardinals' wide receiving core is not exactly what it used to be. And it's
I got that as a win.
You do? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I mean, in the first 8 games, do you have them going like 2-6, or what do you have them going as? Because the Saints will be tough, Steelers will be tough, Packers are tough, Panthers are tough.
The losses are Giants, Panthers. I think we're going to lose to the Bucks late in the season. And the second time we play Green Bay, we're not going to win both the games of Green Bay. This is not going to happen. So one of the Green Bay games we're going to lose. The hopefuls I'm looking at are the Falcons, Steelers, and Bengals. I'm hoping that we can beat them. You know what I mean? So that I'm not giving those a guaranteed nose. But the rest of them, I see us beating the Saints. I mean, the Bears. That's 2 wins right there. The Vikings. I mean, I would say a guaranteed 1, but I'm putting it as 2. You know what I mean? So I don't see us having too bad of a season. Maybe 10-6 again, and hopefully we can get a couple of those hopefuls, like the Falcons, Steelers, and the Bengals will be huge games, especially as Cincinnati's Week 15.
Yeah, it's something that's going to be interesting. I mean, you're right, and plus Tampa Bay with how they got healthy in the draft. I mean, they gave Jameis Winston some good weapons. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I definitely see this team, because I only see them winning 2 games in the first half of the season. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they beat the Saints. But I don't know. I mean, that's a toss-up game. I think they beat the Cardinals. I think they beat the Vikings. It's because they just found ways to do it, and they can do it. Giants will be interesting. I think, their defense obviously was smothering, but this is where it's going to get interesting, because if the line truly improved, the Giants didn't score a lot of points last year. That is a Monday night. That is a Monday night game. If you want to impress people, you can do what you didn't do against the Seahawks 3 years ago. You can go on the road, Monday Night Football, and make a statement against a good defense and be like, hey, maybe you don't take us lightly. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying it's a good opportunity. But it's definitely exciting. Any other big news that will come down the pipe? We'll obviously have a Lions podcast for it, because now football season has technically officially started. Because the NFL draft kind of kicks that thing off. So you have rookie OTAs coming up in the next week or so. We can give you updates on those, talk to reporters that are there, have them on Lions SRD, and then obviously preseason, only 3 months away, kids. Not that far. Preseason will start up really soon. The Hall of Fame game is exactly less than 3 months away. So, if you're really craving for football, it is literally right around the corner. And so are more Lions SRD podcasts here on Sports Radio Detroit. Other podcasts here, me and Mike are on the SRD Roadshow every Saturday. If you can't listen to us live, which is from 9 to 11, definitely the podcast will be up here on the website. Out of Bounds goes live on Facebook every Monday and Thursday. Their podcast released Tuesday and Friday. You have the Michigan Sports Truth with Taylor Phillips. You have the Kentucky Derby on Saturday, so you're definitely going to want to tune in to the Whip and Nene podcast. Pete Spivak's going to have you covered. If you need to make any last-second bets, can't guarantee you're going to win money, but maybe your odds improve if you listen to that podcast because he's been right a lot more than he's been wrong. Pistol Pete's been really, really good. And then, yeah, you have other shows. Pucking Around, that's still going on because the playoffs are still going on in the NHL. Unfortunately, we don't really have an NBA show, but we'll talk about it on the road show. Talk about the playoffs. And yeah, I mean, we have everything coming for you. We even have a wrestling fans that's probably going to be coming up soon as well. But that's it. Any other last things, Mike?
E.L. Lee. Everybody love everybody.
There it is. Love it. E.L. Lee from everyone here at Sports Radio Detroit. I'm Ben Sloggy for Mike Pro. We say goodnight.